Is there actually a problem with Gen Alpha? Don't personally know anyone in General Alpha, so my input might be useless. I've been seeing a lot of content from teachers that say middle schoolers can't read to the point of them taking reading classes off the core curriculum. I've also seen other teachers saying that kids know the shape of words but can't necessarily read because they aren't teaching phonics anymore. I think that, coupled with being raised around media and screens far more than any other generation, leads to a downtrend in literacy and, by some degree, behavior. Hard to say. Scores on the ACT at least have been decreasing for 6 years, but that's not always an accurate measure. But a lot of school systems are lowering standards, so it's hard to compare raw data when the benchmarks are different. I'm a substitute teacher for K-12. These elementary school kids get away with way more than I ever remember. Students who literally lay in the back of the classroom for hours and do nothing. The notes left by teachers saying to just ignore their behavior and don't fight it. Like what? If a kid did that when I was a student, we'd get sent to the principal's office and probably get detention. I've also seen several students have complete meltdowns, throwing chairs, swinging at the staff, and destroying expensive school property. They literally get pulled away to calm them down for a few hours and then sent right back to class. No repercussions whatsoever. When I ask around, I tend to learn that the meltdowns are typical for that student. Some of these kids are truly feral and no one is stopping the behavior. From what I've heard and read from teachers, the problem with Gen Alpha is less a problem with children and more a problem with the school system and, in a broader sense, the failings of late-stage capitalism. On the home front, parents are just overwhelmed. Raising kids is difficult. It's also damn expensive, and the runaway economy has created an environment where, to support a family, both parents need to be working full-time jobs and possibly side gigs as well. Parents just don't have the time or energy to properly adjust to the demands of parenting in 2023. And kids aren't spending enough time with their parents, which is detrimental for their development. On the school front, teachers are also stretched too thin. Schools are underfunded. Classes are too big. Everything is unstable because of the political landscape. Pay is decades behind where it should be. And nobody is throwing teachers a life raft. It's accepted science that students are more successful in smaller classes. The fewer students a teacher has to manage, the more time and attention they can dedicate to forming relationships with their pupils. Teaching has been tarred and feathered by capitalism, though, because teaching children isn't creating a financial profit. I argue that private schools are a blight on society, but that's a different discussion. It's been painted as a drain on resources for society. Teaching has been forced into a role where it has to be cost-efficient. That is high grades for the minimal investment. The reality is this: the more investment in the education system, the better the results for students. What I believe is that the type of capitalism we're living through is ruining education and destroying childhood. In a world where every aspect of life has to be exploited for profit, there is no room for humanity. There is data comparing children from one generation to the next. The biggest one coming to mind would be the PISA study. That's an international study by the OECD that performs a number of standardized tests on 15-year-olds and compares the averages between countries. These studies have been done for many years now, and you can see clear tendencies downward for many countries between 15-year-olds 10 years ago and 15-year-olds from recent studies. And in many countries, these study results always hit home hard. In Germany, my own country, the results were the worst ever recorded in all categories. And that country is not the only one which clearly saw a downward tendency in their results. Also, You have to keep in mind that numerous U.S. schools receive a lot of their finances depending on results from these standardized tests and overall student performance. And additionally, there are programs in place that make it impossible for children to be held back, even if they have very evidently serious problems in their skill levels and development. A child that has serious issues just multiplies these issues but is not held back to repeat or catch up on the topics they've missed, just pushed on to the next grade. So results of these standardized tests cannot be taken serious or viewed neutrally, since too much depends on these results to not assume that school do everything in their power to uphold scores above the necessary minimum. Anecdotal. But I dated a math teacher relatively recently. She said that the way that things are structured now, no teaching ever gets done. It sounded like her daily life was wrangling kids from her own class and other classes. She also described how the kids she taught were completely illiterate when it came to computers. They are so used to having apps and doing things through Google applications that they have no concept of how files work on a computer or how to even save a file. It's the early stages of the movie Idiocracy. I'm Gen X. And they said the exact same thing about us when I was a kid. Just a bit less nicely, to be honest. Well, they just had a 3-year pandemic completely disrupt their schooling. So they are going to need a little time to adjust and make up for the loss. I was handing back evaluation sheets at an extracurricular, sports place that I work at. And I asked one very quiet, well-behaved girl about 910 years old for her name. She told me, but I wasn't quite sure. So when I handed her the sheet, I told her to look at the name and make sure it was hers. She told me she couldn't read. We are in an upper-middle-class suburb kind of area, and this girl is in grade 5 or 6 and can't recognize her own name written on a sheet of paper. She didn't ever strike me as dumb before that. She can listen and follow instructions in class, focus on the task at hand, and knows other general knowledge stuff. Left, right, parts of the body, even if I name a more complex part like hamstring. She's definitely not the only one either. If there is a reading problem, I honestly do think that it first came from our generation. Ever since Bush Jr. signed that "No Child Left Behind" law, most underprivileged schools just pass kids to the next grade instead of making them repeat the year over again. I had a few friends, millennials, who constantly was pass on to the next grade level despite having reading difficulties, and my younger brother, who is Gen Z, was passed on as well despite having learning disabilities. He was in 11th grade with a 4th grade reading comprehension. Now my niece, Gen Alpha, been shown to get passed up as well, and her reading isn't the best either. The problem is with the school system and how state and federal government run them. All I know is that my personal experience of teaching in middle and high school with these kids, and some Gen Z kids too, is that they have no respect for anything. This includes teachers, staff, other adults, other classmates, and themselves. During COVID, no one showed up to online classes or did any work and still passed despite failing my class. The system also made us not be able to fail them. The students do not care to learn or do any work and blame the teachers for them failing. I wasn't aware that if you didn't show up to class or sat there doing nothing, that you would learn by osmosis. Ask them what that word means. They won't be able to answer. Ask them to read the analog clock. They can't. WTF is the point of these kids being in school besides the school collecting government funds? I am not sure, because I can't even say it was safer than being at home or on the streets. I am really scared for my kids to be of school age, even though I will do my best to keep them from becoming like these students were. Has technology rotted their brains? Not sure what it is? Edit. These students also have no real career aspects, as they all think they are going to be professional football players or basketball players or TikTok stars. There are statistical issues with scores in grade school because of home learning during the pandemic, but largely these are exaggerated at this time. The kids that can't read are usually in states with a massive push to damage public schools. Vouchers to give welfare to those rich enough to send kids to private school anyway. Moms for liberty and defunding schooling as a matter of course. ITT. People providing yet more anecdotes despite OP specifically asking about statistical evidence. Short attention span from use of social media and iPads. Also, they seem to know less about technology. Like they know how to set passwords and navigate social media. But they don't tinker with fixing technology beyond that. All the alphas I know, and I know a lot, as a teacher, behave much better than any other generation. I think because their millennial parents actually treat them with love and respect. Much more so than those millennials' baby boomer parents' harsh parenting style. Visit our teachers and it'll confirm for you. Lots of teachers there are complaining about Gen Alpha. Ignore that nonsense. Those claiming the younger generations are complicated are just older generations complaining. And that has been the case since ever. No, the millennials are not as they are portrayed by older generations. Neither the Z or the newest alphas. It's just that old people get used to their ways, and when anyone comes with a different idea or way to do stuff, they will complain. Parents are too soft, as in treating their kids as friends, allowing them to do anything without consequences. Kids get called in principal office, parents scold the principal, kids get no consequences for their action. Not only Gen Alpha, but I see many of my peers too. Gen Z. Alphas are crusty iPad kids and millennials made them that way. It's not looking good. Millennials and the Gens after are all addicted to their phones. It's made us significantly dumber and more anxious. My son's Gen Alpha. He's a toddler. Not sure how he's bad behaved. This is just another one of those my generation's better things. Stupid, really.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.